Welcome back to this new episode of Twins. Television today, of course, we're continuing with building our Ferrari. As you know, the engine is broken. And Daniel, my twin brother, ordered some new gaskets, new timing belts, and new idler pulleys in the previous episode. And today we're also going to continue dismantling certain parts of this Ferrari. As you know, we have quite a lot of corrosion damage, since this car has been outside for a really long time, and that's exactly what we're going to dismantle in this episode. We're also going to have our injectors checked, because a leaking or poorly spraying injector can cause the engine to run badly. Although you saw in the previous episode that the timing belt isn't set correctly, so there's plenty to do in this episode. We're going to start dismantling the engine so that we can rebuild it with fresh parts once they all arrive. Of course, we've ordered original Ferrari parts, so I'm super excited to get started with those. But for now, like I said, we're going to take everything apart, and I'm really looking forward to it. As you can see, we have quite a bit of corrosion, and I'm starting here by removing the sticker. I couldn't order this sticker separately online, so I'm trying to take it off as carefully as possible so I can maybe stick it back on later with a bit of spray glue. I'm removing the intake pipes with the mass airflow sensors, and once they're off, I'll move on to the throttle bodies. Throttle bodies are removed, and to my surprise, I'm still smiling. I should actually start crying, since the intake in the project is full of oil. Can you see that, guys? It's completely full. We'll get a better look at that in a moment, once the red part of the intake, the top part, is off. I do know how this can happen if you overfill the Ferrari engine. Since it has a dry sump oil system, the oil will end up in places where it shouldn't be, including the intake. We already learned this during our agricultural project, that we have to refill this very carefully. If you do it wrong, it will spit out engine oil. Then you're not happy. No, so now we're going to continue with dismantling the intake, and it's a bit of a puzzle figuring out how to take everything apart. Since we've never worked on the Ferrari before, but there's a first time for everything, so we crashed it through Ferrari. But for left or right, that's how it is there. To be able to dismantle the intake, all the vacuum hoses and crankcase ventilation lines need to be disconnected from the intake. Next, we began dismantling the injector rails. We tried to remove them from the car, but unfortunately, it wasn't possible. It's not possible because the connectors were under the intake and we couldn't reach them. We decided to set it aside for now and possibly come back to it later. We've now started loosening the intake. It's held in place by about 15 small nuts that were really in super tricky spots. We also had to make some room around the power steering reservoir to be able to remove the intake. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough, so we had to remove the red cover, the top part of the intake. We loosened it again for a moment since we thought it was stuck. We thought the gasket was sticking, but that wasn't the case. We had just forgotten 4 bolts. After that, the intake came loose right away, and now we had enough space to lift the intake out. And that's exactly what we did. Guys, you can take my word for it. It was a battle of about 4 to 5 hours to get the intake off. Unbelievable. For the people who have done this before, you know how much work this is. Please give a thumbs up. We were completely exhausted. I've never experienced anything this crazy before. The way this is attached. Plus, of course, we don't have a manual. We have to magically find one somewhere. But anyway, we finally have a bit of an idea of what it all looks like now. And it was really insane to get into every little corner where there was a nut stuck. Guys, just check out that gasket on number 2, for example. Completely deteriorated oil traces that go in here. Look at this. This isn't recent. This is just really all caked on here. So it's not surprising there are oil traces there. Because guys, check this out. Don, can you maybe show the viewers how much oil is in here? Yeah, this is unbelievable. You can literally pour it out. That's how much is in here. Look at this. It's just sloshing around like crazy. This is really from overfilling the engine. I can't imagine that the engine is broken. Since we measured the compression, and the compression test actually indicates that the pistons and things like that are all fine. Look, the oil scrapers are of course a different story, but still I think, since the compression was good, that's not the reason why the oil came up. But really because of overfilling, because of not knowing anything about a Ferrari, that's what I think. Check this one. It's completely black. Just imagine what ends up at the spark plug. Yeah, which one is that? That's number 8. So this is 1 through 5, 4. And then like this to 8, 5 through 8. So that's number 8. We definitely need to flush out our crankcase ventilation, because that could also be a reason why so much oil is getting into the intake. We still have many things to investigate, which we'll do in the meantime. Because of course we've ordered all the parts for the timing set, which has to come from England, and we're hoping to have everything complete again once the parts arrive. So we're going to take the intake to get it powder coated, we're going to have the small cover powder coated, and we're going to have our coolant reservoir powder coated so that everything will look nice and unified. We'll clean everything before reassembling, but this was a real nightmare. The injectors still need to be removed for cleaning and inspection, since we want to reassemble everything in perfect condition. We just don't want to have anything later on where we think, damn, we should have checked that. The next morning, I immediately got to work cleaning the intake. As you can see, a lot of oil is coming out, and this can really only be caused by overfilling the engine. I got to work with a lot of brake cleaner and a small brush to reach everywhere properly. As you can see, the top side is already almost clean, and now I'm working on the bottom side. That green gasket also had to go, because we've ordered a new one, and when we rebuild the engine, everything will be new. I'm still working on it. I used a Scotch-Brite pad to go through those air channels to polish them a bit. This way the flow will be optimal later on. After a few hours of polishing, this is the result. I'm very proud of it. Here I'm quickly removing the throttle valve. I'm taking it out because I don't want that mega pure coat on it. Alright guys, that was a productive morning. It's a new day here, and as you've seen, we've been super busy emptying out our intake manifolds, because this is our intake track and it was really dirty. We've cleaned it completely, polished everything up with a Scotch-Brite pad so the flow will be optimal again. And we're gonna take this over to Vivalda Tires, these people at Vivalda. They actually do powder coating for almost everything, not just wheel repair, but they also powder coated the Lamborghini frame rails for us. And today I spoke with Vic, and he said, of course, just bring your intake covers by. We're obviously going to powder coat these in red again, so that's where we're heading next. But before we leave for Vivalda, we first need to empty our coolant reservoir, the hose that runs along the coolant expansion tank. I had to unclip that for a moment, because it needed to make space so I can reach the nut later. Here I'm just sucking out the coolant, my oil pump was empty after 3 times, and the coolant looks super clean. So again, I don't think the head gasket is broken. Here I'm just loosening the 4 nuts so the reservoir comes off, and then the 3 hoses that were attached to it. I neatly put everything in my basket and immediately left for Vivalda Tires. It's just around the corner from us, and after a 5-minute drive, we're there. We've been going to Vivalda for a long time. So we come here with our private cars, work van, and we even brought our old Lamborghini here, and now also with our Ferrari. They are professionals when it comes to tires and rims, and they also do computer numerical control turning. We're back in the workshop. As you just saw, we dropped off all the parts at Vivalda, and those guys are so professional. I don't need to tell them anything anymore. I actually don't really need to explain anything to them. They all knew that the coolant had to be taped off during sandblasting. Unbelievable, but good. We're going to continue with removing the injectors now, because the injectors are an essential part of the engine's combustion. If combustion is off, you'll hear bangs from the exhaust. Or a misfire through the intake. You don't want any of that. That's why we're going to a company soon that will test the injectors for us. But first, let's take them out. I told you we were going to test the injectors, but unfortunately that's not for this episode. Since it turned out to be really fun content that's also educational, I decided to make a separate video about it, so that'll come next. So if you're curious about the injector test, don't forget to subscribe. Give a thumbs up if you enjoy the Ferrari content. It helps the algorithm. See you next time, ciao.